Most people believe muscle loss is simply a natural consequence of getting older. You hit 40, maybe 50, and your strength just fades. But the science tells a very different story. Here's what the research actually shows. Age isn't the root cause of muscle loss. Hormones are, specifically disruptions in your body's hormonal signaling systems involving testosterone, growth hormone, insulin sensitivity, and even cortisol rhythms are the real drivers behind the steady erosion of muscle mass, power, and resilience. And the most important part, many of these hormonal changes are not inevitable. They're influenced powerfully by your daily behaviors, stress levels, sleep patterns, and even when you eat and train. A pivotal study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men and women with poor sleep and chronic stress exhibited hormonal profiles that mirrored those of someone 20 years older, with significantly lower levels of anabolic hormones and higher catabolic markers like cortisol. In other words, your biology is listening to your lifestyle and adapting accordingly. Now, why does this matter? Muscle isn't just about aesthetics or athletic performance. It's a vital organ of longevity. Skeletal muscle plays a critical role in regulating glucose, protecting metabolic health, maintaining balance and mobility, and even supporting immune function and cognitive clarity. Losing it doesn't just change how you look, it changes how your brain works, how you age, and how you feel every day. So in this video, we're going to unpack a major shift in how we understand muscle health. We'll explore what's actually happening inside your body as hormone signaling changes and what science-backed tools you can use to reverse or prevent that decline. Because here's the empowering truth. Muscle loss is not your fate. It's a signal, a biological message that your internal chemistry is off balance. And when you learn to listen to that signal and respond with intention, you can rebuild strength, energy, and vitality regardless of age. We'll cover 6 key hormonal mechanisms that silently shape your ability to build and retain muscle. And more importantly, I'll give you actionable tools to optimize those mechanisms through nutrition, training, timing, nervous system regulation, and sleep science. This isn't about hacks or hype. It's about understanding how your body really works and using that knowledge to shape a stronger future. Let's begin by identifying the first and most misunderstood hormonal shift that impacts muscle, the role of chronically elevated cortisol. Have you ever gone through a period of intense emotional or work stress and noticed that despite eating well or even working out, your body felt weaker, you looked flatter, more inflamed, or even lost muscle tone? That's not in your head. It's cortisol. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but that label undersells its complexity. Cortisol is actually a survival tool produced by the adrenal glands. It helps your body respond to immediate threats. In acute bursts, it mobilizes energy, heightens alertness, and even helps reduce inflammation. That's useful if you're being chased or injured. But in today's world, the threat isn't a predator. It's a never-ending loop of low-level stress. Notifications, financial worries, deadlines, lack of sleep, unresolved emotional tension. And when cortisol stays elevated for too long, it begins to turn against your muscle. Here's what the research shows. Cortisol is catabolic, meaning it breaks down tissue. A study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology found that individuals under chronic psychological stress had significantly lower muscle mass and strength, even after controlling for age and physical activity. What's happening in your body when this occurs is a redirection of resources. Elevated cortisol signals the body to prioritize fast energy over long-term repair. Muscle protein is broken down into amino acids, which are then converted into glucose via gluconeogenesis to keep your blood sugar high in case you need to run. Helpful in a true crisis, but destructive when it's happening all day, every day. And it doesn't stop there. Chronic cortisol elevation suppresses testosterone and growth hormone, both critical for muscle building and recovery. It also interferes with sleep, creating a vicious cycle. Poor sleep elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol degrades your sleep quality further. But here's the empowering truth. You can regulate cortisol not with willpower, but with behaviors that shift your nervous system. A simple tool to apply is NSDR, or non-sleep deep rest. This includes techniques like yoga nidra or certain guided meditations. Just 10-20 minutes a day has been shown in studies from Stanford and other institutions to reduce cortisol levels and improve autonomic regulation. Another tool is deliberate breath work, specifically extending your exhale. A breathing pattern of 4 seconds inhale, 6-8 seconds exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol secretion. Try this before sleep or after a stressful meeting. And let's talk about exercise, because while it's essential for muscle building, it can become a cortisol trap if not dosed correctly. Long-duration cardio or excessive high-intensity training, especially in a sleep-deprived or fasted state, can spike cortisol even further. Strength training with sufficient rest and recovery, 3 to 4 times per week, has been shown to blunt cortisol over time while boosting testosterone. Another overlooked habit is light exposure. Morning sunlight exposure within 30-60 minutes of waking anchors your circadian rhythm, helping regulate cortisol's natural peak and decline rhythm. When that rhythm is stable, you feel more energized during the day and fall asleep more easily at night. Both are critical for hormonal balance and muscle retention. One more subtle but powerful shift: how you frame stress. Research from Dr. Aliyah Crum at Stanford shows that simply viewing stress as enhancing rather than debilitating can actually change your physiological stress response. This doesn't mean denying pressure or pretending things are fine. It means orienting your brain toward resilience, which downstream influences your cortisol response. So ask yourself, are you constantly wired, even when you're not working out? Do you sleep but still wake up tired? Do you train hard but feel like you're not recovering or even losing muscle? These are signs your cortisol system may be dysregulated. To summarize this first core concept, cortisol is essential in the short term, but toxic when chronically elevated. Chronic stress breaks down muscle and blocks the very hormones you need to rebuild it. You can reset your cortisol rhythm using tools like NSDR, breathwork, sunlight, and training smarter. If this insight is helping you, consider subscribing. We're building a science-first community here focused on real tools for a better mind and body, and there's much more coming your way. When most people hear testosterone, they think of men, aggression, or perhaps bodybuilders, but that's a limited and misleading view. Testosterone is not just a male hormone. It's an anabolic molecule essential for everyone who wants to build or maintain muscle, stay sharp mentally, and recover from physical or emotional stress. Let's be clear on what testosterone actually does in the context of muscle. It increases muscle protein synthesis as it enhances the sensitivity of muscle fibers to mechanical load, meaning your workouts land more effectively. And it accelerates recovery by reducing muscle breakdown and inflammation. Here's what the research shows. After about age 30, testosterone levels begin to decline gradually, about 1% per year on average in men. But that statistic hides a deeper truth. The drop is not simply due to age, it's due to lifestyle, sleep disruption, nutrient deficiencies, and body composition changes that all feed into a hormonal feedback loop. In women, testosterone levels are about 10-20 times lower than in men, but just as vital. Women with too low testosterone may experience poor muscle tone, reduced energy, low libido, and difficulty recovering from exercise. In perimenopause and menopause, these shifts become even more pronounced. One pivotal study in the Journal of Applied Physiology found that sleep restriction in healthy young men led to a 10-15% drop in testosterone in just 1 week, with corresponding reductions in strength and muscle building potential. Sleep matters that much. So let's talk about behavioral tools that can optimize testosterone naturally. First, sleep is non-negotiable. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality, consistent sleep, not just quantity, quality. Deep sleep stages, especially stages 3 and 4, are when testosterone release is at its highest. That means minimizing blue light before bed, cutting back on alcohol, and establishing a consistent wind-down routine. Second, resistance training, especially compound lifts like squats, deadlifts, and presses, significantly boost testosterone levels, particularly when done in short, intense sessions under 60 minutes with good recovery. What's more, the post-exercise testosterone spike is greater when training is done with intention, meaning your brain is fully engaged in the movement, not just going through the motions. Third, body composition matters. Visceral fat, particularly around the abdomen, actively converts testosterone into estrogen via an enzyme called aromatase. So excess body fat doesn't just increase inflammation, it lowers your testosterone. Regular movement, balanced nutrition, and strength training help correct this balance over time. Nutritionally, there are several micronutrients essential for testosterone production. Zinc supports testosterone synthesis and is often depleted by stress or sweating. Magnesium improves free testosterone availability by lowering sex hormone-binding globulin, SHBG. Vitamin D functions more like a hormone than a vitamin, and studies show low levels correlate strongly with low testosterone. Aim for daily sunlight and supplement as needed. And let's not forget emotional stress. Chronic activation of the sympathetic nervous system suppresses testosterone through elevated cortisol, as we discussed in part 1. So tools like NSDR, breathwork, or even daily time outdoors in nature serve double duty, lowering cortisol and freeing up testosterone production. Here's something subtle but powerful. Confidence behaviors, things like standing tall, making eye contact, speaking assertively, don't just reflect high testosterone, they can promote it. A study from Harvard showed that adopting high-power poses for just 2 minutes increased salivary testosterone and reduced cortisol. Your body posture sends a signal to your brain and your hormones listen. Now, ask yourself, are you feeling flat or weaker despite training? Are you recovering slowly, sleeping poorly, or noticing mood shifts? Are you unknowingly sabotaging your hormonal health with late nights, overtraining, or nutrient-poor meals? These are invitations, not warnings, to realign your biology. To summarize, testosterone is not just for men and not just about sex drive, it's your muscle's ignition key. Sleep, strength training, nutrient intake, and emotional regulation all play a critical role in testosterone optimization. Small, consistent behaviors can make a massive difference, starting with better sleep and better training quality. If these tools are bringing value to you, I invite you to like the video and subscribe. This channel is about translating real science into real change for your body, brain, and beyond. Up next, we'll shift from testosterone to a less talked about but equally important piece of the muscle building puzzle, insulin sensitivity. Because even if your hormones are aligned, if your cells can't hear the signal, your gains will hit a wall. If testosterone is the ignition key for muscle growth, then insulin sensitivity is the fuel delivery system. You can be training hard, sleeping well, and even producing enough anabolic hormones, but if your muscle cells aren't responsive to insulin, your nutrients don't get where they need to go. And here's the thing, insulin is often misunderstood. It's not just about blood sugar. It's a powerful anabolic hormone, one of your body's most potent tools for muscle repair and growth. But like any tool, it depends on proper use. What's happening in your body when you eat, especially carbohydrates or protein, is a rise in blood glucose, which prompts the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin then tells your cells, especially muscle cells, to open up and absorb that glucose along with amino acids and other nutrients to either store for fuel or use for repair. Insulin sensitivity refers to how effectively your cells respond to this signal. When you're insulin sensitive, your muscle cells take in glucose quickly and efficiently, fueling performance and recovery. But when you're insulin resistant, that signal gets weak. Nutrients don't enter the muscle efficiently. Instead, glucose remains in the bloodstream and excess is stored as fat. Here's what the research shows. A landmark study in diabetes care demonstrated that individuals with higher insulin sensitivity had greater lean muscle mass, faster recovery from workouts, and lower levels of systemic inflammation regardless of their age. And perhaps more alarmingly, insulin resistance doesn't just affect metabolic health, it disrupts your hormonal signaling. Elevated insulin suppresses growth hormone release, raises cortisol, and increases inflammation, all of which accelerate muscle loss. So how do you know if this is affecting you? Ask yourself, do you crash after meals or feel sluggish and bloated? Are you gaining fat, particularly around the midsection, even with clean eating? Do you feel tired after eating instead of energized? These may be signs that your insulin signaling is impaired. But here's the empowering truth. Insulin sensitivity is highly trainable. You can improve it in as little as a few days with behavioral shifts. A simple tool to apply is movement after meals. A 10-minute walk post-eating, even a slow one, significantly reduces blood glucose spikes and improves insulin response. One study in Diabetologia showed that 3 short post-meal walks were more effective at controlling blood sugar than a single 45-minute workout. Another powerful lever is meal timing and composition. Eating earlier in the day when insulin sensitivity is naturally higher allows for better glucose management. Front-loading calories, especially protein and complex carbs, toward breakfast and lunch rather than dinner enhances muscle fueling and reduces fat storage. And speaking of composition, protein and fiber are your allies. Pairing carbohydrates with protein slows glucose absorption and stimulates insulin more efficiently toward muscle. Fiber, on the other hand, blunts glucose spikes and supports gut health, which is directly tied to insulin sensitivity. Strength training plays a major role here as well. Muscle is your largest insulin-sensitive tissue. The more muscle you have, the more glucose you can absorb. Resistance training increases the number of GLUT4 transporters, the doors through which glucose enters cells, making your muscles more metabolically active and insulin responsive. There's also emerging research on the benefits of time-restricted eating, TRE, typically eating all meals within an 8 to 10 hour window. TRE has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and promote lean mass retention, especially when aligned with the body's natural circadian rhythm. The key is not to eat late into the night when insulin sensitivity is at its lowest. And don't overlook chronic inflammation, poor sleep, Processed food and emotional stress can all impair insulin sensitivity over time. So managing those upstream factors through consistent rest, whole food nutrition, and stress regulation pays off downstream in your muscle tissue. To recap, insulin isn't just about blood sugar, it's a muscle-building hormone. When your cells are insulin sensitive, nutrients go where they're needed, into muscle, not fat. You can improve insulin sensitivity quickly with daily movement, meal timing, and strength training. And here's a final challenge. After your next meal, take a short walk, even just around your home or office. It's a tiny habit with massive metabolic benefits. Now we'll look at how deep sleep and growth hormone form the nighttime foundation of muscle recovery and why what you do before bed may be just as important as your workout. When people think about building muscle, they tend to think of the gym, the grind, the reps. But the real transformation, the actual construction of new muscle tissue doesn't happen when you're lifting. It happens when you're asleep. More specifically, during deep sleep, also known as slow wave sleep, your body enters a profoundly anabolic state. This is when it releases the highest levels of growth hormone, a key player in cellular repair, muscle recovery, fat metabolism, and tissue regeneration. Here's what the research shows. Growth hormone, GH, peaks within the first 2 sleep cycles, primarily in the first few hours of the night, assuming you're getting deep, uninterrupted rest. If your sleep is fragmented, delayed, or shallow, your GH pulse is blunted. That means slower recovery, reduced protein synthesis, and greater muscle breakdown the next day. One study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that even partial sleep deprivation, just reducing sleep by 2 hours for a few nights, significantly reduced GH release and impaired post-exercise muscle repair. That's how sensitive this system is. So what's actually happening in your body during deep sleep? Your nervous system shifts into parasympathetic mode, your rest and repair state, inflammatory markers drop, muscle tissue that was stressed during the day begins to rebuild, protein synthesis ramps up, and GH released in pulses from the pituitary gland triggers IGF-1 production in the liver, another powerful muscle-building signal. Think of growth hormone as the architect and IGF-1 as the construction crew. Without deep sleep, the job site stays empty. But here's the problem. Many people are unknowingly sabotaging this system, not with poor workouts or bad nutrition, but with habits that disrupt deep sleep. Let's break down a few of the most common disruptors and what to do instead. First, light exposure at night, especially blue light from phones, TVs, and LED bulbs, suppresses melatonin, the hormone that helps initiate deep sleep. When melatonin is low, your sleep onset is delayed and your GH release is shortened. A simple fix: use blue light blockers, or better yet, dim your lights and avoid screens for 60-90 minutes before bed. You're not just preparing for sleep, you're preparing for muscle recovery. Second, late night eating, especially high-carb or high-fat meals, can delay your transition into deep sleep. When your digestive system is working overtime, your body prioritizes digestion over repair. Aim to finish your last meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime for optimal GH release. Third, alcohol. Even 1 or 2 drinks in the evening can suppress slow-wave sleep and GH output. Even if you fall asleep faster, it's a sedative, not a sleep enhancer. You might feel like you slept deeply, but your physiology tells a different story. If you drink, give your body at least 3-4 hours to metabolize alcohol before sleep. Here's a simple behavioral tool to enhance deep sleep and GH release. Cold exposure, or hot to cold contrast, in the evening. Taking a warm shower followed by 30 seconds of cold, or simply exposing your face to cold water, can stimulate parasympathetic activation and help your body transition into a deeper sleep cycle. Some studies suggest this may also indirectly support GH release by calming the nervous system. Another tool is NSDR, non-sleep deep rest techniques like yoga nidra or deep guided relaxation. Practicing NSDR during the day has been shown to improve both nighttime sleep quality and growth hormone sensitivity, especially in individuals under high stress. And let's talk about consistency. Your circadian rhythm thrives on routine. Going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends, reinforces your body's natural rhythm for GH release. Irregular sleep schedules confuse your internal clock and impair hormone secretion. You don't have to be perfect, just consistent enough. To recap, growth hormone is your body's master repair hormone, and it's released during deep sleep. Your nighttime habits matter just as much as your workouts. Light food, alcohol, and temperature can either support or sabotage muscle recovery. If this insight is helping you connect the dots between your habits and your results, consider liking the video and subscribing. These are the tools that most people never learn, but they're the ones that unlock long-term health, performance, and resilience. Let's imagine your body is a construction site. When you're building muscle, your body needs raw materials like amino acids, energy, and signaling molecules like hormones that tell the body, let's grow. But what happens when the site is constantly surrounded by smoke, a kind of invisible fog that slows everything down? That's what chronic inflammation does to your body. It's the invisible muscle killer that rarely gets talked about, yet research shows it plays a massive role in sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, insulin resistance, and even suppressed testosterone and growth hormone production. What's happening in your body when inflammation is elevated? Your immune system releases cytokines, molecules like TNF-alpha, IL-6, and CRP that are meant to protect you in the short term. But when they stay chronically elevated due to poor sleep, processed food, lack of movement, or stress, they create a persistent alarm signal in your system. That signal interferes with anabolic processes. It reduces protein synthesis and increases protein breakdown in muscle. A pivotal study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that individuals with elevated CRP, a marker of inflammation, had significantly lower muscle strength and lean mass, even when physical activity and diet were controlled. In other words, inflammation alone was enough to shrink their muscle tissue. Even worse, chronic inflammation increases levels of myostatin, a protein that actively inhibits muscle growth. Myostatin acts like a brake on your gains, and the more inflamed your body is, the harder that brake is applied. So where's the inflammation coming from? Here are the three most common and most fixable sources. Processed food and seed oils. Highly refined foods, especially those rich in omega-6 fatty acids like soybean, corn, and sunflower oils, promote a pro-inflammatory environment. When omega-6 vastly outweighs omega-3 intake, the result is systemic inflammation. A simple tool here: aim for a 2:1 or even 1:1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats. That means reducing processed oils and increasing intake of wild-caught fish, flaxseed, chia, and walnuts. Supplementing with 2 or 3 grams of high-quality EPA-DHA omega-3s per day has been shown to reduce inflammation and even preserve muscle mass in older adults. Emotional stress and overtraining. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, isn't inherently bad, but chronically elevated cortisol, especially in response to emotional stress or high-volume training without recovery, promotes muscle breakdown. Have you noticed that when life gets overwhelming, sleep suffers, digestion feels off, and workouts feel harder? That's your stress system hijacking your anabolic potential. What the research shows is that chronic stress raises IL-6 and TNF-alpha, disrupting not just muscle maintenance, but also insulin sensitivity and testosterone. That's a triple threat to your muscle health. A tool to apply here: daily stress decompression. It could be a 10-minute breathwork session, an evening walk without your phone, or writing a short reflection in a journal. The point is to signal to your nervous system that the threat is over and let your body return to an anabolic state. Poor gut health. Your gut lining is supposed to act as a selective barrier, but when that barrier is compromised from processed food, alcohol, chronic stress, or antibiotic overuse, it can allow toxins and inflammatory molecules to leak into the bloodstream. This is known as leaky gut, and it's strongly linked to systemic inflammation. Healing your gut isn't about fancy protocols, it's about consistency. Fiber from plants, probiotic-rich foods like kefir or sauerkraut, and eliminating ultra-processed junk creates the environment your gut needs to seal and repair itself. Even something as simple as chewing slowly and eating without distraction can support digestive signaling and reduce inflammatory triggers. Now, here's a motivating thought. Inflammation is one of the few muscle-damaging factors you can actively reverse, and quickly. Within days of changing your inputs, your food, your rest, your mindset, inflammatory markers begin to drop. Your muscle building signals come back online, your recovery improves, and your metabolism starts shifting in a better direction. To recap, chronic inflammation blunts muscle growth by suppressing anabolic hormones and increasing catabolic ones. It comes from food, stress, gut health, and environmental triggers, many of which are in your control. Anti-inflammatory habits like reducing processed foods, managing stress, and improving gut health restore your body's ability to grow and repair. In the next section, we'll bring it all together by focusing on the overlooked link between brain chemistry, motivation, and your consistency with habits, because all the science in the world means nothing without the ability to stick to what works. Let's face a hard truth. Most people don't lose muscle because they don't know what to do. They lose it because they stop doing what works. Consistency is the multiplier of progress, and the most overlooked driver of consistency is not discipline, it's neurochemistry. Here's what the research shows. When your dopamine system is working well, you're more likely to feel energized, motivated, and focused on goals. But when it's dysregulated, often due to overstimulation or chronic stress, you lose that forward drive. Things that used to excite you, like training, preparing healthy meals, or sticking to a sleep schedule, start to feel like a chore. So let's decode this. Dopamine is not a pleasure molecule, it's a motivation molecule. It surges not when you achieve something, but when you anticipate it. It's the brain's way of saying, this is worth pursuing. And it's not released equally in everyone or in every context. Your dopamine tone, your baseline level, and your sensitivity to reward is shaped by your habits. The modern world floods your brain with unnatural spikes of dopamine. Social media, hyperpalatable food, constant notifications, streaming platforms. These things deliver fast, frequent, and easy rewards, but they come at a cost. When your brain is overexposed to high dopamine stimuli, it downregulates its own dopamine receptors, meaning natural rewards like making progress in the gym or prepping a healthy meal no longer feel as satisfying. This is called the dopamine deficit state. And in this state, even basic self-care starts to feel exhausting. Here's what's happening in your brain. The ventral tegmental area, VTA, releases dopamine to the nucleus accumbens, part of your brain's reward circuitry. When this circuit is overwhelmed, your sensitivity to future dopamine signals drops. You start to require more stimulation to feel the same drive, and things that require effort, like building muscle, become neurologically less appealing. But here's the empowering part. You can retrain your brain to become more motivated by lowering baseline stimulation and building reward around effort. One of the most powerful tools, dopamine fasting, or more accurately, dopamine recalibration. Try this. For 24 to 48 hours, remove artificial dopamine triggers, no social media, no processed sugar, no streaming, no mindless scrolling. Replace them with effort-driven activities, walking, reading, preparing food, resistance training, journaling. At first, your brain will resist. It'll feel bored, restless, even agitated, but then something clicks. You begin to feel satisfaction again from the process itself. That's your dopamine baseline resetting. Another tool, attach dopamine to effort, not outcome. Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman has spoken about this often. When you reward yourself for the act of doing the hard thing, you train your brain to enjoy the pursuit, not just the result. So instead of thinking, I worked out because I want results, reframe it as I'm the kind of person who shows up even when it's hard, and that's powerful. This subtle shift rewires your dopamine system toward consistency. Here's another science-backed tool. Use visual cues to reinforce habit identity. A 2021 study in Nature Communications found that when people track their behavior in a visible way, like logging workouts on a wall calendar or checklist, dopamine spikes occurred just from seeing progress. This is because the prefrontal cortex, your planning and identity center, interacts directly with your reward circuitry. When your brain sees evidence that you're moving forward, it doubles down on that behavior. So give your brain visual wins, track your sleep, count your protein, log your workouts, not for perfection, but for momentum. Lastly, optimize the timing of behaviors to match your neurochemistry. Dopamine levels are naturally higher earlier in the day, especially after sunlight exposure and movement. This is why morning resistance training or even a walk outside can create a cascade of motivation that lasts all day. Pairing light exposure, movement, and protein early in the day sets the tone for follow-through and helps keep cortisol and dopamine in their optimal rhythm. Let's summarize the key principles here. Motivation lives in your brain's dopamine circuitry, and you can train it. Limit overstimulation to reset your reward system. Attach reward to effort, not outcomes. Use visual progress markers to fuel momentum. Leverage your brain's natural rhythms. Do hard things early in the day. If you've made it this far, your brain already knows this matters. The key now is giving it the right neurochemical environment to stay the course. You've just learned what most people never get taught, that losing muscle isn't simply about getting older. It's about what's happening under the surface. Your hormones, your brain chemistry, your daily behaviors, these are the levers that determine whether your body is building or breaking down. So let's recap what we've uncovered. First, testosterone, growth hormone, and insulin sensitivity are not just buzzwords. They're essential signals that tell your body, keep this muscle, build more if possible, and these are deeply influenced by how you eat, move, and recover. Second, You learned that muscle loss often begins in the brain with poor sleep and disrupted circadian rhythms, blunting your anabolic hormones and accelerating catabolism. Even something as simple as getting 10-15 minutes of morning sunlight or training earlier in the day can reset those rhythms in your favor. Third, we explored anabolic resistance, where your muscle becomes less responsive to the same signals over time. The fix? Precision, aiming for 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal, resistance training 3 to 5x per week, and making your workouts slightly uncomfortable to stimulate adaptation. Fourth, we covered the cortisol testosterone tug of war and how chronic stress, overtraining, and mental overload can tilt the balance toward breakdown. But with tools like deep breathing, non-sleep deep rest, NSDR, and better recovery planning, you can rebalance your hormonal environment. Fifth, you learned about chronic inflammation, the silent force that undermines muscle and amplifies fatigue. The good news? It's reversible. Through better food choices, stress management, and gut support, you can lower inflammation and re-enable growth signals. And finally, we unlocked the role of dopamine in brain circuitry and consistency, how overstimulation dulls motivation, and how effort-linked reward systems, visual tracking, and low dopamine environments can reignite your drive to follow through. The bottom line is this: your body listens to your behavior, and your behavior is shaped by your brain and biology. So if you want to build or maintain muscle, especially after 30, 40, or 60, don't just chase more protein or better workouts, chase better inputs for your hormones and nervous system, because when those systems work well, everything else becomes easier. Here's your challenge for today. Pick one tool from this talk, just one, and do it consistently for 7 days. Maybe it's getting morning sunlight and a walk. Maybe it's hitting your protein target at breakfast. Maybe it's logging your workouts with a visual tracker. Or maybe it's doing a 48-hour dopamine reset and seeing what happens when you lower stimulation. Whatever you choose, make it real. Start small and commit, because the best results don't come from knowing what works. They come from doing it repeatedly. And as your hormones start to shift, as your motivation starts to return, and as your muscle begins to rebuild, you'll feel it, not just in your body, but in your energy, your confidence, and your clarity. If this video helped you understand your body in a new way, consider liking and subscribing. That's the kind of signal that helps us grow this channel and reach more people with real science and real tools. Drop a comment below what's the one insight or habit you're going to try this week. We're building a community of people who care about health, performance, and living with intention, and I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, keep your mind sharp, your body strong, and your choices intentional.